Hey guys, Xaryu here, and today I have some games of FMP to share with you guys here on Tiger's Peak Arena. I'm playing Arcane, and my Priest is playing Discipline, and my Feral Druid is playing Feral, and we are playing against a Holy Paladin, Destruction Warlock, and an Elemental Shaman. I kind of want to go through, there's actually two games here with you guys, and kind of share the play style of Arcane FMP with you guys a little bit, and kind of explain what I'm doing throughout the match, and what I'm looking for throughout the match. But this Arcane FMP playstyle is a lot different than you might expect. It's not just rush in, go for as much CC as possible, but there's also a very, you want to do that, but there's also a very passive side to it, and line of sighting and playing defensive, making sure that you're not taking too much damage, really communicate with your priest about fears, about positioning, and things like that. So a lot of the times we're going to do bash on the paladin or some type of stun onto the paladin with a fear or a polymorph to follow up, and we're going to put the feral bleeds onto one of the targets, but sometimes two of the targets. So our primary target here is going to be at the Destruction Warlock, but if he's playing too defensive, we can also go on that Ellie Shaman as well. One quick thing to note, it actually didn't quite work here, but I like to use Mass Invisibility when my priest is in CC so he doesn't get further CC'd. So I did it during the Hammer of Justice. That rep still went off because I did that a little bit too late. But if you do it while your priest is still in CC, a lot of the times he won't get feared off of the Hammer of Justice, or he won't get Repentance off of the Hammer of Justice. So that Mass Invisibility was definitely used on purpose there. Also just as a defensive, but while my priest is CC'd, anytime my priest is CC'd, you want to do a couple things. One, line of sight. Two, pop something like Temp Shield. And I still had to go into my Ice Block there. So this is pretty much as bad as the opener could get for us. Right in the opener, I've had to use my Ice Block, my Temp Shield already, and the failed Mass Invisibility on the Repentance. But we're trying to get counter pressure right away. I'm getting some damage out over to the Ellie Shaman. We get the Warlock Trinket and the Shaman Trinket from just one polymorph there onto the Paladin. The fear was used on the Warlock as well. The Pally keeps going for those Repentances, so we really want to keep an eye out for that. And we're just really pressuring down the Warlock right now. Full bleeds, couple missiles going off, the orb going off, and the full sheep now landing onto the Paladin. The Warlock is forced to wall there. He also does get a Chaos Bolt. Should not have let that Chaos Bolt land. So another thing that we want to talk about is line of sighting these Chaos Bolts from the Destruction Warlock as much as possible. I just let one hit me, so that wasn't very good. But I got the resheep there onto the Paladin. Have the counter spell available. We get the full fear out on the Pally, and does bubble sack. Since the Pally's playing Relentless, he's not going to have another trinket. And I think he is playing melee wings as well, so he has no more sacks. So we're really just like one go away from actually winning this game. Warlock and Shaman, both no trinket. Pally, no bubble, no sack, and no trinket because he is playing Relentless. So if we just survive one more go, we get a full sheep or full fear or both onto the Paladin. We pop all of our cooldowns onto the Destruction Warlock. He could definitely just go down. And this is the defensive play that I was talking about. We're staying on the pillar. We're line of sighting. We're not pushing too far in right now because it's not really the time yet. Now is time. We get the bash. We get the polymorph. Now I can come back into line of sight just a little bit. Because it's our time to actually play offensive. But before this polymorph, when we're waiting for diminishing returns, is when you want to kind of play on the pillar. The Mark Lunatic explodes, the orb comes out, the War Stomp into the resheep onto the Paladin, and the Warlock goes down. So we just rotated through their defensive cooldowns. Even though we had kind of a bad start, bad opener, we sat on the pillar. We definitely made sure to not overextend for too long. We used defensive cooldowns when we had to, and then when we get the another CC chain of the Pally, a bash into a sheep or a bash into a fear, those feral bleeds start crushing the Warlock, and we added that arcane support damage to get the kill. Alright guys, so game number 2. This looks like game number 1, but I promise it's a different game. It's also on Tiger's Peak Arena versus the same exact people, the same exact composition as well. So this is good. So we can talk about exactly the same stuff, but this time in a little bit longer of a match. This time the Pally is playing Trinket, and I do think he is playing double sack and not melee wings, if I'm not mistaken. I can't quite remember, but you want to kill his Earth Grab totems. It's kind of annoying to kill his Arcane because to kill totem as Arcane, you either have to use the Arcane Barrage, which ruins your stacks, or you have to use a Missile proc, which takes away from your burst and your damage. So either way, it kind of sucks to kill totems. A lot of times you want to call for your priest or your feral to kill the totems as well. Put that slow up to try to get a little bit more damage. And this is a beautiful opener. I actually want to rewind this opener and kind of show you what we did here. I have Immolate and Flame Shock. I have 2 debuffs on me, but I have Mass Invisibility, and I see the Pally's pushing in just a little bit. I call it for my priest to dispel my Flame Shock and my Immolate, so he dispels it, and from here I can use my Mass Invis because it's not going to break to the damage. With the Mass Invis, I use a blink and a polymorph and a second blink to actually secure the polymorph onto the paladin across the map without any type of stuns required from my Feral Druid. This allows my Feral Druid to do as much damage as possible onto the enemy Warlock. Now there's a couple things we want to keep an eye out here for. The Shaman, we want to keep an eye out for if he's casting Hex, if he's casting Healing Surge. That's what we use our counterspell on. And then the Warlock is what we want to burst with our Arcane Power, Presence of Mind, and our missiles. But we want to keep an eye out for the Warlock counterspell, the Shaman Shear, the Warlock second counterspell, the Shaman's Hex, the Pally's Trinket, and the Warlock's Wall. All of those things could happen in these next few moments. That's what we want to keep an eye out for. Right away, popping a bunch of my cooldowns, fake the Shear. The Warlock misses his counterspell onto maybe the Priest here, and the Shaman misses his Shear onto me. So those are two of the things that we were talking about. The Warlock also popped his wall. I popped my Arcane Power. It got purged by the Shaman, and I popped Presence of Mind, bursting the Warlock down. Now the Shaman's casting Hex. I throw out the counterspell. So that's another thing that we were just talking about, right? We want to counterspell the Hex so that we don't get Hexed here on our go and have to use a Trinket. Now, the Shaman is counterspelled. The Warlock is stunned. He used his wall. The Pally's coming out of the polymorph, so we're casting another polymorph onto the Pally to continue our CC chain. So it's going to be Sheep into Resheep with the counterspell and the stun. So that's triple CC right here. My Priest is not in position to go for a Fear off the polymorphs, so we maybe want to call for that or keep that in mind. But the Pally is going to have to use some defensive cooldowns. It's going to be Trinket and Sack coming out. Now is when I run back to the pillar. Go is over. As soon as we get that Trinket, as soon as the Pally leaves CC, our go is done. They're using their defensive cooldowns. We got Trinket, we got Wall, we got Sack from the Paladin as well, Ultimate Sacrifice, and now we run. Now this is when you sit behind the pillar. You can kill totems, you can collect damage. The Feral can stay in, okay? The Feral can kind of do his best to bear form the bolts, kick the bolts, stun the bolts, more stomp the bolts, all kinds of stuff like that. And we kind of just sit back and relax until this next go. Now, I got a Blink CS there onto the Pally, actually, which is another thing you can do for that setup. We got a Blink CS into that half stun, going for a polymorph here, but they still have Warlock Kick and Shaman Kick. I do Blood Elf Silence the Pally to go for that polymorph, so we can't sacrifice that polymorph, but it does not look like it's going to be enough because there is two kicks here for a Poly. I would have to fake both of them here. Both of the kicks now come out onto me, and can still go for another polymorph onto the Paladin here. The Ferocious Bite comes out, so much damage coming out on that Warlock, but it's time to play back. If I play out in the open for too long, remember like that first game, I just get absolutely destroyed. So we only want to come in just for brief moments to actually get some damage off. Throwing out that orb, get my stacks reset there. Have to kill that totem because we're just sitting in place here. And now the coils come out. You know the coils are going to come out when you see that Havoc debuff. I have cooldowns here about 20 seconds. My Priest is kind of crowd controlled with that counter spell, so we want to sit by the pillar, line of sight as much damage as possible. We're going to throw out that Mass Invisibility, and we're going to go for the Sheep onto the Paladin off of that Triple Fear Bash. The Warlock probably has his wall back up. It's only 1 minute there for that Destruction Warlock, but the Pally doesn't have his Trinket yet. So if I land this Poly, which it looks like I do, now it's time to actually force more defensive cooldowns from the enemy team. Polymorph lands, Nova all the Infernals. The Infernals are a big offensive cooldown from the Destruction Warlock. If you just Nova them, line of sight them, it really negates the damage that they do. The Pally is in the Polymorph. Doesn't look like a repolymorph is going to land, so he's going to throw out that Sacrifice most likely. There's the second sack. So now we got both sacks from the Paladin and the Trinket. So we're slowly working through their cooldowns. I still have a lot of defensive cooldowns, or just my Ice Block and my Invis, I guess is what I have. And my Priest still has a lot of his defensive cooldowns as well. Back to the pillar I go, line of sighting, not playing too much in the open when we're not actually doing our goes. Spamming Sheeps onto the Shaman because we're doing very well offensively. We don't actually have to bleed both right here. My Priest does get feared. I get very low here, do pop my Blink and my Wall, so it looks like I'm going to be fine. But this Earthquake is destroying us onto the pillar. My Feral's playing a little bit more aggressive. Now we got that full fear onto the Paladin, trying to follow it up with some type of polymorph, but I do get counterspelled on that polymorph attempt. It looks like a stun's going to come out, and another Sacrifice is going to come out from the Paladin. Now he is out of sacks, so he used his first sack, his second sack, and the first sack came back up. So that's 3 sacks this game. But that's pretty much it. Gonna throw out that Mass Invisibility, go for some Sheeps, fake the Shear there, try to throw the Sheep out on the Shaman, do get knocked back unfortunately. Finally get a Sheep there onto the Shaman, looks like I'm gonna switch it to the Paladin, the Bash and the full Sheep coming out onto the Paladin, but I am forced into my first Ice Block, and that Ice Block was probably forced just because I was in the open for so long trying to get the Sheeps and the Polymorphs. If I was just hanging out by the pillar a little bit more, was a little bit more patient, I Probably wouldn't have even had to use that ice block there, but nonetheless, we got CC on the Paladin finally, and I had that Arcane Power, Presence of Mind, big burst, trying to go for some re-CC. Looks like the Pally does get out of that though, and I do get counterspelled on that re-polymorph, so want to wait until we get CC on the Paladin to use the Arcane Power, Presence of Mind. You don't want to just toss it. So I get the half polymorph and now we use it. We get the wall from the Warlock, which isn't quite enough. We get that full fear following up the polymorphs though, which is wonderful. And we do get the trinket from the Pally, the wings from the Pally, and the blessing of protection from the Paladin. Do counterspell the Paladin there, so the Warlock's still under some pressure, but it looks like he's probably going to be fine. Now the full sheep coming out of the Shaman, the full stun now coming out onto the Paladin. Now that the DR is off for polymorph, we can definitely go for a sheep onto the Paladin. The Warlock gets a 3% life there. I can't believe he doesn't go down. Pally's doing a great job of keeping him topped off. Going for the sheep onto the Paladin. Do get interrupted. Pally has that bubble, and I actually, my priest calls he's going to mass dispel the bubble, so I start casting a polymorph when he's still in the bubble. Oh man, that timing. The bubble gets, I'm gonna rewind that. The bubble gets emptied right. Oh my goodness, look at that. Poly, it gets emptied, and immediately as the MD goes off, he goes right into that polymorph here. We throw out some arcane missiles, and we throw out the arcane barrage, we throw out the arcane orb, and the Warlock finally goes down. So guys, this is a game of attrition. We are slowly wearing through the enemy team's cooldown with our goes, with the bashes, with the fears, with the polymorphs. We're slowly working through all of the defensive cooldowns the enemy has to offer, and then at the same time, when it's not our turn to do damage, what I mean by not our turn is that polymorph is on diminishing return, the Pally has no CC on him, and we're kind of just playing back, line of sighting, making sure we don't have to use too many of our defensives until Feral pushes in, gets that stun, we get that stun into the fear, stun into the polymorph, into the fear, get a ton of defensive cooldowns. When the enemy has no more defensive cooldowns, boom, we finally win the game. Here's the damage breakdown. These are some awesome games, guys. I'm actually not doing too much damage, and as you could probably guess why, the playstyle is very defensive most of the time, but when we get that CC and get that damage, we get those very, very effective kills. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video of Arcane FMP. I have a ton more footage from this same session. If you guys want to see it, make sure to slam that thumbs up button. If you guys don't want to see it, slam that thumbs down button. But talk to me in the comments, guys, about what you guys want to see for next time, whether it's more of this kind of stuff. I've been playing a little bit of my Ellie Shaman. We have some Ellie Shaman Windwalker footage as well, and some of my priests as well. So let me know what you guys want to see down below in the comment section, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Peace.